So they say you should never start a presentation with an apology, but I'm going to break that convention because I've got a cold, and I apologise to the next person that uses his mic because you're going to get one too.
I'm going to yell that.
You are the next person to use the mic. Yeah.
I'm not going to use the mic.
So I've met some of you. A lot of you are people that I haven't met in the past. It's good to meet up with you. My name's Chris Payne, if I haven't spoken to you before. I am representing the gold sponsor here today. Is that me?
Where is that?
That's you, Amar, isn't it? Sabotaging my presentation.
It's on you, but it's not. Sorry, carry on.
Mine works.
Okay.
So I'm here representing Advanced Cyber Solutions. We are the gold sponsor for this event. This is my third Wisdom of Crowds, and I love coming here. It's a fantastic event, and I hope everybody agrees. I've been to 2 of the UK events. It's also held in Dubai, and this is the first Brussels event I've been to. So I've always found these very, very useful, and we're very happy to commit funding to these events because we think they're very useful, not just for ourselves, but also everybody that's in the room. I am, although I run this company now, in the past I've always worked as an information security consultant, so that's it, I'm now off Rowena's Christmas card list. And we were so close, only 6 weeks as well. And I have a slightly different take on information security and GDPR, in that I've always worked in information security, but in the past 2 years it appears like my industry's disappeared and been replaced by GDPR. I don't know if it's in hibernation, if it's never going to come back, but everybody who works in information security now appears to have to just talk about GDPR. It's flavour of the decade, maybe. So that's kind of my journey into GDPR, and unfortunately enough, and I'll admit it to the crowd, I have done the training programs and I do have the certificate that calls me a practitioner, or whatever that's good for. But I do have that, so hopefully that qualifies me to at least have a conversation with a few of you in the room regarding GDPR. But more about Advanced Cyber Solutions. So I've always worked in distribution. I've always worked as a consultant. I'm not a sales guy. I'll be the first to admit that. And I've always worked with a lot of different vendors and information security products, primarily worked in the data classification market. So if any of you use data classification solutions or are familiar with the industry, you might know names such as Titus, Bolden James, Secure Island, and I've worked with all of those companies and I've worked implementing them as well. So I feel like I know enough about data classification. I decided to start Advanced Cyber Solutions, not because I wanted to try and be a sales guy, because nobody answers my phone calls anymore, but because I saw a genuine market out there for cutting edge technology. All of the other IT security providers that I'd worked for in the past liked to play it safe. They liked big margins, they liked, in my own opinion, boring products that couldn't necessarily solve problems that I was seeing out in the industry. And I wanted to start to work with vendors that I thought solved real problems that I was seeing that I could then help to take them to market and use my skills as a consultant to be able to apply their vendor solutions to those problems. Now we, at the moment, resell for a number of different solutions. Some of them are represented here today. Human Firewall, for example, Ipswich are here, Netconsent are here, and of course we have Shieldox, who I'll invite to talk a bit more in a moment. But there's a really good reason for having Shieldox here. We've signed them up very recently, and when we viewed the solution, we knew very quickly why we liked it, why we thought it had real-world application. And it simply comes down to my experience. When I worked in data classification, and Office 365 was becoming a bit more popular than it was in the early days, the obvious question for the data protection market was, how do I apply data protection, not just in Microsoft Office on the desktop or in the VDI environment, but what about the web apps? And what about all of those things that are created in Google documents and those things that are stored in locations that originally had no API access? So that's the first area that was critical for us to solve. The second one was the use of rights management. A lot of people combine data classification software with rights management in an effort to not just classify something, but actually have some level of control over it as well. And the easiest way to break rights management is to turn a document into a PDF, or take it outside of its native location so that those policies are no longer available to it. So there's two fundamental issues with that market. And Shieldox has a really interesting offering which allows you to combat that, tracking a document through its entire life cycle and having that audit that you can view to show you who has been accessing that document, where, all the way into wherever it happens to be. And it's not containerized. We're not talking about looking at it in a web app or anything like that, using the native applications that it's been created in. So rather than continue to talk about it, I probably want to pass over to those that are more qualified. We have Amit here, who's going to show you the solution live. He's flown in from Tel Aviv to show you this today. And we also have JP here as well, who's flown in from New York to talk a bit more about the solution. So I'd like to hand over to those guys if possible.
Sure. Great, thanks.
Contributes to a good immune system in the
Absolutely, thanks. Thank you very much. I'm John Papalizio, go by JP, and I'm a new advisory board member to Shieldox. From my perspective, I've been a chief security officer, chief risk officer, and technologist in mostly large financial institutions for close to 30 years. And most recently been doing interim CSO, CRO work. And so I'm the one that gets called in when bad things happen, and we clean things up, often quietly, and then we leave. And then we've got an advisory business where we're trying to then apply all of those things that we've been fixing to preventive and to do things in the right way so people don't get in trouble. And so I'm always on the hunt for things that are a little bit easier to use and allow business to actually do business. Because I was guilty, as many people are, of putting in solutions and looking at security and looking at risk management with the wrong eyes. And I was not enabling business, and so I was part of that problem. And so over the last 15 years, we've really endeavored to try to have as least friction as possible. And so I want to talk a little bit about a problem set, and then I'll turn it over to Amit to show how they're addressing the problem set. So the problem that we're talking about here is sensitive documents that must be used, that must be collaborated on, that go through lots of change, and that move within your company and outside your company. Contracts, lots of changes, but you want the use of that and the dissemination of that contained. You have investigation documents for if you've got breach management. There is a set of people inside and outside the organization, but there has to be collaboration, there has to be change on that document, and you want to make sure that it doesn't get out of control and spread, because you're going to break technical privilege, you're going to introduce integrity issues. And so these are just two of the examples. Board information, communications about financials that have to go in and outside of the company. So as Chris was saying, one of the things that has been troublesome is that you had to choose either containerization or you had to choose restrictions on the use. And you never could really prevent folks from being very creative and finding ways in order to take that information and apply it someplace else and send it in other areas. So when I first got introduced to what Shieldox was doing, I likened it to having the policies, the protections, and the usage rules and expectations ride close to that document and stay with it. And so it's kind of use and abuse. So he'll show you the terms of the way I think about it is a document then can alert you in terms of abuse or stop abuse, or you can then go and withdraw versions. You can withdraw, or you can protect after the fact a set of documents because you're now protecting one that had a version that's later. So one of the things that I liked, and we'll go, and then I'll turn it over to Amit, was that you're able to think about document protection and document global policies in a different way without slowing down the organization, and you're allowing them to have that collaboration with a sense of control. It's not perfect, it's not ubiquitous, but it is a part of an advanced set of solutions that I'm looking at for my clients and for enabling brand new companies that were in our portfolio. So I'll turn it over to Eileen.
Thank you, JP. So I'll introduce myself and then I'll attempt to make a demo here. I've broken a few of my rules, which is namely use your own computer for demos. Enter Ali. I bound her computer 10 minutes ago and installed everything, so crossing my fingers it works. My name is Amit Govrain. I'm one of the co-founders at Shieldox. There are 3 of us. We're based in Tel Aviv. Most of us come from an array of different industries outside of security and compliance. For example, I come from the cloud infrastructure world, just sold a company to Microsoft a few months ago. And I have my colleagues in artificial intelligence, and obviously we also have some security experts, JP being one of the few that we've added to our board. Shieldox, let's make a quick introduction to what we are and debunk what we're not. We are an autonomous policy decision point, and I'll define that very shortly. We're not a DLP, we're not an RMS, we're not a DRM. Although we do have elements that resemble that. So let's go into what we actually are. Here's a problem, one of the problems that we've already discussed. Documents need to be collaborated on. Documents need to stay in motion. However, once you apply all the existing principles, most of those don't uphold the security that you require. The policies behind DLPs are build a fence around it, or DRMs or RMS, build a fence around the documents and hope and pray it remains at rest and never to go outside the organization, otherwise we're in trouble. And then NDAs are your only way to protect that. Well, we had taken that principle and applied it on its head, meaning if you can't build a fence strong enough or high enough, then how about you go and embed it into the document and make it a part of your document lifecycle? And that's exactly what we've been able to do with our documents. So imagine the red being the world we're familiar with, the DLPs, DRMs. Chris mentioned Secure Island. We're in conversations with Microsoft Azure Information Protection. All of those principles are intact. However, the minute you have to go and collaborate, you need to collaborate in Microsoft Teams. Today, most organizations have Slack, Messenger, all the various mail servers of the world. At that point, getting inventory of what's been shared, where it's been going, that becomes very cumbersome.
Sorry to interrupt. Are we going to share these slides?
Sure, absolutely. We also have some brochures outside that you can go to Amar and Bell. So we understand that the green, and I'll describe what this means and then we'll start moving through the presentation. The green is all your documents that are public facing. We may not care about what happens to that information, but it's always good to have tracking on it. So the green is your marketing document, publicly facing documents, but the blue, that's our blue ocean in Shieldox. That's the documents that are sensitive by nature, but still need to be collaborated with internally and outside. And that's what we're here to address. Mind you, I didn't come prepared for this presentation, so I'm discovering each slide as it goes, right? As it happens, this is a type of typical use case you'll find. You'll have somebody in your legal department, somebody in sales download a contract from legal department, and that can go into an operational, maybe collaborated on. That goes over to a client, and then the client may end up sharing it with another person. As you can imagine, that chain becomes, that chain becomes pretty cumbersome. The minute you actually go outside the organization, there has to be some kind of policy that dictates who's allowed to view this and who's not. And that's I'm going to show you actually a live demo as opposed to show you what this means in a slide. We have some patented information, vector space understanding, a patent in that space, motion-centric security, vector space reasoning and AI. What it really means is we have a bunch of smart people who reverse engineered the way a human brain thinks and converted that into code, okay? And we can talk about what that means once you apply everything to it. So we're in autonomous security, meaning, and I think we discovered this in our previous exercise, the less interaction the end user has, the more advantageous it is. A security system ideally has to be non-invasive. The end user should almost have it invisible to their view. However, somebody like the CISO or the admin will have full visibility to what happens. And that's what we've been able to do. We embedded our technology into Office and into the various words. So Office 365, OneDrive, Google Drive, and so on. You can see this is a tiny endpoint. I'll just show it to you. How about that? So here's what our application looks like in OneDrive. You can see the only difference being there's a little shield showing you that these folders are protected by Shieldox. Very, very intuitive to the end user. You can also see each one, you can change the permission setting on this. So I'll explain what this means. Green is tracking. This means you have end-to-end visibility in exactly what happens to the document at all times. Who shared it, who's viewed it, what machines it reside on. Anybody copied text, what text was copied. I'll show that to you in a second. Then you have secrets. Secrets, very, very synonymous to what you'll see in DLP solutions in today's world. You create a virtual vault between two users, one user and the intended, one the sender and the intended user, and only that person is allowed to view the document. It's very safe and secure. However, this is where we reinvented the way things are done. Sensitive being, not only is this user going to be using this document, but somebody they're choosing, and that's where the chain extends itself. And now using artificial intelligence that understands organizational behavior, Active Directory, social graph, email history, what's been shared in the past, what hasn't been, and then build a decision point or policies really on the go as it happens and do so autonomously.
And I think that is really important. I think that's a really important point, because one of the things that we were trying to do as information security professionals over the years is to try to think through all the use cases and then think through how are we going to provide the protections and the policies and put that in place. But invariably, unintended consequences, and we would miss things. So the adaptation and the automation that's behind it, I think, is extremely important in order to understand the actual use and then apply that actual use in a learning mode to then say, well, this is how this person and this group actually behaves and uses documents, so I'm going to apply these same permissions and these same things. So it is reducing the friction between the protection and the use.
Thank you, JP. And here's what it looks like in practical manner. If you're a user of a document, this is how seamless it is. You can see that on OneDrive you saw the little shield. Actually on the computer, on the endpoint, you can see this is how it looks like. You could actually view tiny little endpoint here that actually shows this computer, this station is being protected. And here is the only difference between any Word document and what you would normally see. You can change the permissions very easily, meaning you can modify the security level of the document between secret, sensitive, and tracking. You can actually add users very easily by going and adding, maybe you want to add other admins, you can do so. You can actually add users and permissions accordingly. So Abby over here just got added as a viewer of the document. However, I thought I added Abby. Maybe I was wrong about that.
Yeah, you didn't click on the column.
This is the difference between Mac and PC. So, and I'm a Mac user, and if any of you thought I was very fluent in the PC world. So Abby just got joined, and as you can imagine, you could go and restrict the permission levels that this person has. So you could go and say this person's not allowed to edit, not allowed to print, but they can view. And you can play around with this very easily. You don't need IT's involvement. This is one of the differences between having a solution that's run by IT versus a solution that's run by its users, okay? Now, mapping is a very interesting piece. What is mapping? So because our artificial intelligence understands the relationship between documents, between users, we can actually go and protect all the versions of a certain file, not just the end result. So I'm just gonna go and show you. I took a document, converted it into PDF, now I have 2 different versions. Now imagine I'm collaborating within a team in an organization, 5, 6, 7, 8 different users, everybody doing their input. Finally, we're happy with our result. We send it to maybe an attorney outside the organization to give their view, maybe another consultant, and finally back to us. We're gonna PDF the final result. We're all proud, and we're gonna encrypt that. Here's the problem. There's probably about 17, 18 different versions residing on various endpoints, various computers, various files, and none of those are protected. So even though we've done our part by having the publicly facing document protected, all the other 17 are data risk. Because our artificial intelligence understands the relationship not just between users, but between files and data, it will actually go and reverse encrypt or backwards and encrypt all the various versions and all the various endpoints of the document. So we can actually go and create a level of safety that otherwise everybody would have had to do on their own. That's kind of where the automation and autonomous comes into place. You could actually go a step further and you can see, and maybe I should sit down while I try to control this computer. You can see all the various functions. You can see who's tried to view this, where it's been shared with. You could actually go to the resolution of what text has been copied from this document as a full audit trail, completely in line with GDPR, GDPR initiative here of knowing where all your data resides and where it needs to be sitting, okay? Now, I'm gonna give you this. I wasn't expecting that. I'm gonna show you a little show and tell here. This is not so much the purpose of today's discussion, but these are some DLP capabilities. Again, if you're using this with our standalone agent, you could actually go and copy information. There you go again. And you can go and try to bypass the system by creating a different version of a document. Let's go and maybe create a text document, call it test. Now I'm gonna go on the test document, I'm gonna paste information, as I said, from a secret file. And this information, I'm gonna try to sneak outside my organization. Again, this is not connected to my Active Directory, so this is a personal Gmail, and I try to go and sneak it out. And you can see it got blocked. It actually shows. I'm gonna go and actually revert it because I tried this before. It actually recognized the same transaction. I'm actually gonna try this again, and you can see the same result by Shieldox. Okay. Not only that, you can go and try to paste information into a document, and again, Shieldox will go and protect that. And what happened here, it's very important to understand. We took information that was from a secret file, converted it into a different format, and asked Shieldox to track that information and protect it from leaking out. And that's exactly what happened here, okay? We understand the relationships, and we understand the relationship of the secret information that was being snuck out of the organization. what's good about a solution like this, it's not, it doesn't need to be implemented in such a way that's burdensome. One of the biggest problems with DLP type solutions is you need a whole team to manage the operation of the solution, not just to implement it, but also to maintain it. This is completely plug and play, out of the box. It understands the organization, it understands the social diagram. It will actually go and conform to your company policy within 5 minutes of implementing it, okay? All you have to do is implement the endpoint on the computer and also the Chrome extension that you just saw. And just for a little bit in show and tell, I'm going to show you what we've been able to do, which is hook you into an Alexa, Cortana being launched very shortly. And now you could actually go and talk to your documents with natural language by virtue of us understanding what's in the document. And you want, yes, Mark, please do.
Alexa, ask Shieldox, are there unprotected versions of marketing plan document?
Yes, there are 3 unprotected versions, 2 on your computer and 1 on Sharon's computer. Do you want me to protect them?
Alexa, ask Shieldox, how well are we protected in the HR department?
35% of the documents in the HR department are protected.
Alexa, ask Shieldox, did anyone copy content from the contract folder?
Yes, 3 people, George, Richard, and David.
With real natural language, not hard-coded, you could actually go and interact with your files. By the way, you're also going to be able to do this in chat mode if you don't want Alexa screaming out who's at fault. There's all sorts of ways here to protect your own privacy and integrity.
Okay. A couple of questions coming in, several of them. This platform does not really offer anonymous questions as it has loads of tracking scripts already. We need to be aware of what platforms we use. Okay, I think that's a comment in the spirit of privacy and GDPR. One question, what happens if you zip the text file first and then try to send it? Will Shieldox block? The question, what happens if you zip?
So long as it recognizes the text being, yep.
Okay.
So long as it recognizes the text being from a private file, yes, because we're embedded into the document. Absolutely.
Okay, I will read other questions. Does the user, oops, wake up, sorry. Right, does the user, questions, come on, you can do it. Display questions. Does the user, come on. Putting me on the spot there. What happens if you zip? Does the user see the mark of Shieldox so that they are aware of the protection?
Is there?
Does the user see the mark of Shieldox?
That's correct. This is where it exists. If
So
somebody
they do-
didn't know to look at it, you wouldn't know it. But yes, that's where you can see that
So the
Shieldox is
Shieldox
protecting the
icon
document.
will be there. Okay, next one. Facebook, or, okay, does implementation of Shieldox means that the Shieldox organization gets a map of all the secret documents in organization? So are you
Very good question,
receiving
man.
any content?
It's completely passed through. We don't actually view it. We don't have access to any of the documents. We just manage the rights management with our key. It's an HSM vault, and we just authenticate against document the rights management. So that's, so
Okay.
no, we don't see it.
Sorry, what about printing the confidential document?
Right. Well, again, this is where somebody with authorization to print will be able to print. However, our next version will include anomaly detection and proactive notifications. It's probably worth mentioning what that means. Assuming that there's a document that's being protected, that's secret, and somebody's trying to print it out 20 different times.
Can the classification of the document be changed over time?
100%, but we don't do automatic classification. It's important to understand. The user actually defines it. You can define a folder level, and every document that ever gets populated into that folder will be inheriting those same classifications.
Okay.
Because that deals with the false positives.
So the
We-
statement, the statement on tracking scripts, we need to be aware, I think is a good one. We can address it later on during the coffee break. You can
100%.
take that out and address it. It's a very good statement. What is the AI adaptability of the tool exactly? Do you adapt permissions, for instance?
Yeah, so here's an example, and I meant to go into the detail a little bit further. Let's assume there's a transaction that happened for the first time. You sent it to a lawyer sent it out one more time. If this, we understand the history between this attorney and the person, the recipient. If this action never happened, we will ask the admin of the document, do you give permission? This is the only time it will happen. If they say yes, that builds a rule into the document, and obviously it won't happen again. That will happen, you can share as many times as you want once you've approved that rule. So
Okay.
the rule actually gets built in.
Thank you very much. I know there are many questions and we will come to all of them. The Slido tool is a bit of an interesting one. This allows everyone to start.
Can I
Thank
give
you.
one very interesting use case? And again, sorry, I don't mean to dominate this discussion.
Go on.
There's a lot of use cases we can discuss. One that we like to discuss is what happens when an employee is about to leave the organization. Well, here's what Shieldox will do. If this employee, assuming Shieldox was already installed, was going to leave, took all the documents out, and then 2 months later resigned. You, as a CISO, only find that out the same day, but they have all your information. The minute you disable this permission in Shieldox or in your Active Directory, all of their files will be remote locked. They won't have access to it. They may have the document, they can't open it.
I'm not sure what the mean is. No one takes documents out of there.
I never heard of that.
Doesn't happen. Okay, Amit, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And give a show of hands and then we'll ask